Naomi Klein, I'm going to level with you. She's a bit of a hero of mine. She had a massive impact on me as a teenager, so don't blame her. In the late 1990s, when the left was very weak and radical arguments were quite weak, she put many of those arguments on the map. It was a time of the anti-capitalist movement. People were challenging the status quo, and she became the leading figure. Since then, she's written book after book exposing injustice and calling for radical solutions. And her latest book, No Isn't Enough, I recommend thoroughly you read, but I want to talk to her about where we go now, how we take on these injustices, and is there any hope? What is Trumpism? And how do we fight it?
You know, the main message of the book is that Trump is really just a symptom, right? And this is not a book that spends a lot of time trying to get into Trump's head or pathologizing him. I mean, I don't want to spend any time there.
Because a lot of people do that, don't they? It's just a lot of it is COD psychology, basically, with Trump, rather than looking at it in a political sense.
Right, and I think that leads to the conclusion that everything would be fine if we just got rid of this extremist individual. And there's no doubt that the combination of his mental instability, out of control ego, just general manbabyness, and access to the nuclear codes is uniquely frightening, right? Especially at this moment where we have like two giant men babies who inherited all of their power and wealth, in North Korea and in the United States, basically threatening nuclear war against each other. So I certainly get the impulse to try to get Trump out of power, but I think it's really important to understand that he is also the best thing that has ever happened to this extraordinarily radical Republican Party in the United States, that now, because all eyes are focused on the Trump show and what outrageous thing he's done now, they are savaging environmental standards while no one is looking. They are getting rid of the post-2008 inadequate financial regulations. They are introducing the largest tax break the U.S. has ever seen if they actually do what they want to do. And there's still the story, oh, Trump isn't able to get anything done. And people like this sort of, they're reassured by this story of incompetence, but the Republicans are having a field day. This is a new formula. This is not what I describe in the Shock Doctrine, where there's like some big giant crisis that is then exploited. This is more sort of it's not the Shock Doctrine, it's more like the Schlock Doctrine, where it's just like
Love it.
all eyes on that schlock show. Cable news is essentially just reality television, like, who's getting voted off the island. First it was Comey, maybe it'll be Miller, maybe it'll be Steve Bannon, maybe it'll be Trump. Find out after these commercials. I mean, the ratings have never been better, and they can't spare 5 minutes to talk about the economic agenda that is being pushed forward behind the scenes.
A lot of centrists, when Trump was emerging and it was clear then he'd won the presidential election, they were like, oh my, OMG, he's Mussolini's Hitler. Stop dropping bombs on Syria. Suddenly applauded him.
Yeah.
What's that all about? What does that tell us about that particular brand of politics?
That was presidential. Ordering missile strikes over delicious chocolate cake, as he described it. First, he confused Syria and Iraq.
We've all done it.
But he didn't waste an opportunity to promote Mar-a-Lago's food. He really does represent this tremendous crisis in the system, right? I mean, he is so awful, so grotesque, right? And yet the market applauded. He has been showered with corporate money, maybe not on the campaign trail, but for his inauguration, he broke every record of this frenzy of legalized bribery where American corporations just throw money at the incoming president for his inauguration party, right? All of these captains of industry have lined up behind Donald Trump precisely because of the economic agenda that he is pushing through, right? I think he's made a lot of people see that if this system, can applaud the cruise missiles as presidential and these horrific economic policies as good for the economy, then this has to trigger a deeper examination of the system that produced Donald Trump. The Democratic Party wants this to all be about this one sick individual who, if you elect Democrats in 2018, they'll impeach him and then everything will go back to as it should be, and everything will be well, right? But I mean, in answer to your question, what is Trumpism? I mean, he is the logical conclusion of our current system.
Bernie Sanders. Now, of course, we don't know what would happen if he'd been nominee. Well, Bernie would have won, by the way. But no, I mean, what did that movement represent, the Sanders movement? Is it still there? And what do you think its future is in America?
Well, I think it is still there, but I don't think it has fully entered its next phase. And part of that is just around uncertainty of what the political strategy is, right? I mean, there's a lack of clarity about whether Bernie's going to win, whether there's going to be, whether the fight is within the Democratic Party along the lines of Momentum's fight within Labor, or whether the fight is to create a third party. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and around that uncertainty, there's a lot of people who are just spending a lot of time just saying Bernie would have won, which I don't really. I mean, I tend to agree, but I think we've got to extract ourselves from 2016.
That's a funny meme.
Well, no,
Yeah,
I think
I know what you mean.
we can't keep refighting the 2016 primaries. It is more important to look at why he didn't win the primaries in the United States.
And what do you think, quickly, the main...
I mean, there's no doubt that he was undermined, sabotaged by the party elite. But if we look at what the power brokers in the Labour Party did to Momentum and Corbyn, I mean, like, that's a lot worse. I mean, that he faced a full-fledged coup, as you well know. So certainly that was part of it, but I don't think it explains all of it. In my book, I quote Michelle Alexander, who's a brilliant author of the book The New Jim Crow, and she was incredibly critical of Hillary Clinton during the primaries. She wrote a long piece for The Nation about why Hillary Clinton didn't deserve the black vote. But she also told me why she wasn't able to endorse Bernie Sanders in as full-throated a way as she might have liked to, because she felt that there was not a sufficient analysis of the history of race in the United States, of the way in which race has been so consistently used as a wedge to impose neoliberal austerity in the country. And I heard that from a lot of people, including feminists of my generation, who just felt like, this movement represented yet another sort of traditional male left that doesn't get race and gender, that sort of tacks it on, rather than really having a holistic analysis of how we would never have been able to have this brutal economic model without a hierarchy based primarily on race, but also on gender. The first inputs of an industrial capitalism in this country were stolen indigenous land and stolen African labor. Absolutely. So it isn't even accurate to call it capitalism, which is why Cedric Robinson, the late great Marxist theorist, called it racial capitalism, because theories of racial hierarchy were baked in from the beginning, and they have never left. If we look at how neoliberalism was imposed and advanced in the United States, it wasn't shock that was the midwife. It was race at every stage. It was saying to white voters, it's black and brown people that are abusing the system. Think about Reagan's welfare queens image, right? This idea that black women were pulling up to collect their welfare checks in Cadillacs and fur coats, right? I mean, this is how they sold it.
It was all racialized.
And they're still using these tools, right? And so it's not enough to just say, we need to fix the economy, make it more equal, and the people who've lost the most will gain the most. It has to be deeper than that. So, I think the message of the Sanders campaign is there is a winning progressive coalition in the United States of America, and it is radical. But we have to do better. We have to build that broad progressive tent and plant the right tent poles from the beginning. It can't be an afterthought.
The form of centrism that dominated the Western world when you wrote No Logo, for example, is in a state of collapse. And you have the rise of populist right and new movements on the left. Do you think now the struggle now is, it's either if we don't get our act together, then it will be the populist, xenophobic and far right that will win?
Yes, I do. I mean, I do think that. And I think that genuine left economic populism, maybe you might call it socialism, right, is the only force that is sturdy enough, that meets the real rage that is out there at profound betrayal and exclusion by elites at every level. It's a tremendous moral urgency of this moment, right? Because what we are discovering in these campaigns, whether it is Sanders or Corbyn, these tremendous 70,000 strong rallies that Mélenchon had in France, or Podemos, or Syriza, it is that it is possible to win. I mean, we're coming closer than we've ever come. So if it is possible, then we have to win. And the moral urgency of it is the one that you're describing, that in the vacuum left by neoliberalism, these horrifically dangerous right-wing ideas are entering into that vacuum. And it's also the urgency of the climate crisis, that we have so little time left on the climate clock to reverse the trends and get our emissions radically down, which is entirely in conflict with neoliberal economics. We need to so radically reverse the logic of austerity. We need to massively reinvest in the public sphere in order to reinvent it, in order to fundamentally change where we get our energy from, how we move ourselves around, our countries, our cities, how we live in our cities. So we're talking about huge investments in housing, infrastructure, energy, transit, rail. So where's the money going to come from? This is a redistribution project, right?
Which
and
is why
you
it's
and I
not
have
just a
talked about
challenge,
this
it's
before.
not just an existential challenge, it's a huge opportunity to
Yes.
transform our society.
It is, but it is fundamentally in conflict with our current economic paradigm. So we have the urgency of the rising right, we have the urgency of the climate clock, we are out of time on all of these fronts. So, but yet, on the other hand, we're also realizing it's within our grasp.
As you'll have seen, we had the Grenfell Tower atrocity, where dozens of working class people burned to death in a tower block in the richest borough in London, one of the richest cities on the face of the earth. I mean, don't you think that tells a story of the way our societies are structured, profit before people, deregulation, the housing crisis, you name it, everything was there?
Everything was there. Everything was there and continues to be in this incredible patronizing treatment of the people who lived in the building and around the building as just sort of, passive recipients of aid rather than agents of change who saw this coming, who warned again and again, who have their own ideas about where they should live, how they should live, what their rights are, what the message of this tragedy is. Because it's a message, right? It is a message of system failure at every level, as in all of the ways you've described. And just, it is a microcosm in this one building that is now this
Tomb.
yeah, a mass grave. It's the same logic of this brutal economic discounting of life, right? The saving of a few pounds because the people who are inside the building's lives are seen as not valuable enough. I mean, that is, to me, the same logic that allows a low-lying Pacific nation to disappear beneath the waves.
Absolutely.
Because seas are rising, because we refuse to do what is both scientifically necessary and technologically possible in the face of the climate crisis, because it interferes with the logic of perpetual growth in a consumption-based economy. I think Grenfell Tower has to be a wake-up call for this country, but also a global wake-up call.
In another era of British politics, otherwise known as April, Theresa May launched a general election, the Conservative Prime Minister, to destroy the opposition. People focused on how bad the Tory campaign was. It was terrible. Yeah. It was actually Labour's vision that inspired people. Public ownership, tax justice, living wage, relieving young people of student debt. Yeah. Doesn't that show we can win this? It's possible. We haven't won yet here, but we're a lot closer than we were, and that gives hope for the future of the Western world, doesn't it? Absolutely. Oppositional politics, right? Just the no is not going to win it for us, right? This idea of just being anti-Trump or just being the resistance. It is not enough after 40 years of being told that there is no alternative. The sturdiest part of the neoliberal project is the war on the imagination. Absolutely. And so the power of putting forward a bold, forward-looking vision, which is what the manifesto was, that is what's needed to break the spell. And I think it's fitting that it is, people of your generation and younger who came of age post-2008, so weren't subjected to the same ideological indoctrination as my generation was, because the true believers in neoliberalism have fled for the hills, right? And so now when bold progressive ideas are put on the table, they just make sense, right? And we saw this with the Sanders campaign too, and the way young people responded. Yeah, I think we are in this moment where if we combined a clear opposition to the brutalities of our current system with a bold,
forward-looking agenda that is not nostalgic, but addresses the simultaneous and overlapping crises that we face: climate change, inequality, racial injustice, militarism, gender exclusion. And if we believe in it, right, then we can win. I do believe that.
Naomi Klein, I mean, she's brilliant, and I think inspiring, galvanising, encourages you to have a little bit of hope. I mean, that's unprofessional, just walking on, trying to do my YouTube channel. I thought we were going to do our podcast. Rude. Just rude. Gratuitous TV. We have done a podcast with Naomi. this is Ellie Mae Hagan. It's just unprofessionally walked in on shot. This doesn't look contrived. Well, I'm just saying it just looks a little bit unprofessional. We do have a Agit Pod. We've done a podcast with Naomi Klein as well, so you can have an extra helping of
double serving.
And
double serving of Naomi Klein.
She's kind of encroaching on me, not just physically, but in my career, which I find a bit annoying.
I am.
So as ever, we've got loads more.
You're the poor man's Ellie Mae Hagan. That's what they say, isn't it?
Got to finish.
All right. Right. Well, I know what I wanted.
Got loads. Go away then. Got loads of interviews. Leave your comments, subscribe. I'll see you next time.